I think I'll introduce you, Spiros, and myself. Till then, I think more people are joining in. We are about 20 people right now. So there should be around 50 to 60 people from what the survey says. So should be a lot of people. Anyway, the stream is recorded, just giving you a heads up. So a little bit about me. I'm Daksh Goel, and I'm doing my master's at the Royal College of Art. And I run a small studio, design studio in India, which is majorly an architecture and interior design studio, but it also deals with industrial design and UI, UX, and other graphic elements as well. We started this community about a month ago, and it's been growing consistently. We have about 500 members now, and so there's a lot of people who felt there's a need for designers across the world to have a community to share resources. We make templates for everybody. We've been working day in and day out for that, and we've been helping students create better CVs, have some workshops, have speakers like you, Spiros, to guide the students better, and yeah, share about your experience. About Spiros, Dr. Spyros is a tutor at Royal College of Art, and he is my professor at the Design Products Master's Studio. And he's also an executive director of the European Academy of Design. He's worked with various design projects dealing with agent of change, and today he will take us through his work and his life. I think that'll be very fun to have. Firoz, you can take over.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. And as a member of the design community, thank you. And it's really appreciated. Let me share my screen and I can introduce myself. It's always kind of jarring to hear your own introduction. You know, we write those blurbs, you write those CVs, and always I think we look at it like, how can I speak about myself in the first person? And it's tough. And then someone reads it out, and you're like, cringy, but here we are. Yeah, so I'm Spyros Bofylatos. I'm a tutor in design products at the Royal College of Art in London. I did my PhD, started in 2012 in the University of the Aegean in the island of Syros, Greece. And you might find it hard to believe, especially after my talk. I'm trained as a design engineer, a closeted engineer nonetheless. And my work has been very much informed by this kind of history. I spent the first 10 years of my academic career kind of being surrounded by engineers and telling engineers why they're wrong, which is something engineers never want to do. And then to make matters worse, I even went for my master's at TU Delft, probably one of the best engineering schools in Europe. So I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know what to tell you. I will be talking about introspection today and how kind of intersubjective perspectives are really important in design practice and in design research as well. I will try to explore this by talking a bit about the main themes that inform this work, but also a bit about my own work, practicing kind of both as an academic, a designer, and an educator. I think it's we all wear many hats, but we're more than the hats that we just wear. So introspection is a very inappropriate word, especially in scientific terms, especially in hard sciences. And mind you, we talk about engineering, we talk about the physical sciences. There is something to be said about the human sciences as well. And that's why I prefer the term humanities, where if we try to replicate what works for matter, what works for physics, what works for chemistry with people, then that's quite problematic because we tend to lose a lot of what makes us human, which is fuzzy, it's subjective, it's emotional, it's values informed. So while the scientific method is an amazing tool, it has made modern society what it is with all the goods and the bads. It is also a tool that has been used to essentially remove the power and the agency from different parts, different segments of the population, different people. So in the late 1800s, the whole kind of idea of slavery, which is very problematic, and today we know it should not exist. You could find, for example, in the United States, white slave owners that would lean on what was perceived at the time as scientific knowledge that was excuses to why brown or black people are lesser, or yellow people were lesser to the white man. And by such, it's actually a how would they frame it? It's hair-raising to read some of those texts in today's context, but to claim that this was actually the white man civilizing the lesser races, which makes you go, God. Same thing can be said about the 1920s, if you think about it, when the suffragette movement was starting and women were demanding that they vote. Male people would tell women scientifically, but what if all women are on their periods on the day of the elections and they're hysterical? Mind you, that's comes from Freud as well. And then they, for example, vote an orange fascist into power. What would happen then? We didn't mean hysterical women for that. We needed disinformation campaigns, apparently. But that kind of is the problem. And to say it in a very simple term, it's that if for a person who is shaped like a hammer, all problems look like nails. And I think creativity is so much more meaningful when we use the whole gamut of tools in our disposal in order to create, in order to critique, in order to engage with the world around us. And at times that means that we might experiment. We might not know what we're doing with the tool. And that's where kind of intuition and inspiration comes in. It's those moments where we do something because it feels right. And we adapt based on the results. We understand what worked or what didn't work, and we learn new ways to do things or new ways to fail. Learning new ways to fail is also very important, because through the process of elimination, you might eventually get to the right way of doing something. So intuition is generally an instinctive feeling rather than cautious reasoning. It's the second brain, if you want, that resides somewhere inside the gut. It's that gut feeling. It's that thing that tells you this is the right choice. And I'm sure you've all can think of moments in your life, in your practice, where you did something because it felt right. In a typical scientific model where a theory needs to be validated, it needs to be replicable, where essentially if we come up with a rule, a law of creativity, it's almost like a mathematical equation where I input a problem, I do the process, and the process is the same every time, and I get a creative result on the other side. Obviously, I think we all know that this is not something that can work within a creative endeavor. So, however, intuition is so bad, but some people get to use it. Again, that's kind of my starting point. It's like, okay, so I'm not, as a design student, it's like, okay, I'm not allowed to use intuition. That's a no-no. And I think you know what I did. We all did it. I reverse engineered what my intuition told me, and I presented my tutor my rational methodology for doing things, which in reality happened after the fact. And we lost the opportunity to have an interesting discussion about intuition and all those things. So if you're a white male physicist, Newton in this case, you're sitting under a tree, you're thinking about gravity, an apple falls on your head, and through intuition, you get the mathematical equations that describe gravity. So Newton can use intuition. If you're Archimedes, you're thinking very hard about how can I prove that this crown that was made for my king is not made of gold 100%, and prove that the jeweler actually stole some of the gold. So you're thinking about it very hard. You've hit a wall. You don't really know what to do. You're like, you know what, I'm going to take a bath and just relax. And as you submerge yourself into the bathtub, water displacement happens, and you're like, Eureka! Literally jumps out of the, that scientific myth, jump out of the bathtub, start running, shouting, Eureka, Eureka, which means I found it, I got it, I solved it. So again, if you're Archimedes, you can use intuition. That's a nice line. If you're Kekulé, a chemist, so Kekulé was trying to find and understand what the morphology of benzolium is. So he was trying to understand. He knew the number of molecules of carbon and hydrogen, but he couldn't figure out how they are put together. So one night he was leaving his office very tired, got on a taxi, a horse-drawn carriage at the time, and while he was dozing off, he had this dream of an Ouroboros, a snake that bites its own tail. Just jumped out of his dream, and I was like, that's it. Benzolium is a circle. And that's how he was very rational. He was doing a lot of work. He was thinking about it. But at the end of the day, the missing piece, the key, came through intuition. It came through, the things that happen at the back of your head when you can't really see. And that was something that made him go, that's the solution. So again, if you're a scientist, you're allowed to do it. Not if you're a design student. Okay, good, done. So that's my lecture. You're not allowed to use intuition. Thank you very much. No, that obviously there is more. It's not just intuition, though. Another point, we have to learn from creators. We have to learn from artists, and we have to understand, how do great artists create great art? We know what great art looks like. We know what great art feels like. If you've been in front of a painting, a great painting, or a great piece of sculpture, any great piece of art, you know the feeling. It's emotive. It moves you. Sometimes you can't even describe it, but it tugs on the heartstrings of your soul. And that's something that we all know is real. And also we all know because those amazing paintings cost millions and millions and millions of pounds. So there is something to it other than, late stage capitalism and arms barons exchanging guns for paintings, but we don't talk about that. So one of my favorite abstract painters, Vasily Kandinsky, spent all his life, all his practice trying to create non-representational painting, trying to create forms that mean nothing. And that's really hard because all humans, we are meaning-making machines, right? The moment I tell you something, that's why surrealism is so funny. The moment I tell you this doesn't have meaning, your brain takes it as a challenge. And it's like, oh, this doesn't have meaning? I'll show you. I'll create so much meaning out of it. So Kandinsky's his practice was trying to peel away the layers of the semiotic and put forms on the canvas that were nothing, that meant nothing and didn't exist. And I think this is not a very successful painting, although it's a very well-known painting. I always see a face here, like it's literally two eyes and a nose. So, but that's kind of the goal, and that's the practice. But this is about going to that non-representational place that we don't know when to go, because the only times we're not producing meaning is when we're not even asleep. If we're like heavily sedated for a surgery, and even then, maybe we do. Who knows? But it's really telling of this kind of creating simple forms that are evocative and kind of capture a feeling that is beyond being put into words. In a similar but slightly different vein, I'd say a more layered approach to meaning. João Miró, a Catalan artist born in Barcelona, made what he called dreamscapes. He tried to capture those liminal moments between falling asleep and being awake, and kind of based on and informed by kind of analytical thinking and Freudian psychology, and how this idea that dreams have meanings and it's kind of our subconscious trying to tell us things that are otherwise mysteries to us. He kind of built this layered approach. And first off, I think it's a beautiful painting. It's really big, so when you're standing in front of it, it also has this kind of moment. But you can see that this is a story. This painting is a story with narrative beats codified into a new visual language. And I always love how his initials, like that small this M here, Miro, is hidden. And it's like some things are hidden in plain sight, sorry, while others are quite accessible to the viewer. But again, how does someone become that creative? I don't think an algorithm can make you this creative. And I think now we can almost feel like it's proven, because I don't think if I tell a ChatGPT style Gen AI system, start making non-representational images, it might make it, but it feels more like the maxim, if you leave a room full of monkeys and typewriters for infinite time, eventually you will have a new Shakespearean play written. So I think agency is a really important thing, and introspection is a really important force in this. The final player that I kind of want to bring into the game and talk about is probably my favorite one, and the one that I've worked the most with is tacit knowledge. And tacit knowledge is all the things that we know, but we can't tell, all the things that we might not be able to articulate, or even they might escape the very process of being articulated. So if you think about it, most of us walk. We're expert walkers. We've been doing it for a lot of time. But if you have to walk, I know, because I recently injured my calf and I had to learn to walk normal again for 2 weeks. So imagine someone with a much worse injury than mine. We know how to work. We're good at working, but we can't tell someone this is what you do and this is how you walk. It's something that is embodied. It's something that you have to do. And we find a lot of this knowledge in many fields that are based on skilled practice. All craftspeople have an amazing amount of tacit knowledge. For example, I one of the people that I studied for my PhD was a guitar maker, wooden guitar maker, only traditional guitars, very expensive handmade guitars, one of the best guitar makers in Europe. And just to understand his relationship with his craft, that chap had 7 different illegal timber dealers, allegedly. 7. That's a lot of illegal wood. That person would be able to grab a piece of wood, touch it, smell it, weigh it, feel it. He could tell you within seconds that would fit very well, like on the solder piece of a guitar, the piece between the notes and the body of the guitar, and more a guitar for like a flamenco kind of style music, but not like the normal allegro flamenco. Someone who would like kind of a note of like more melodramatic kind of music in it. And I'm like, you know all these things simply by engaging with a piece of wood for 7 seconds. That's tacit knowledge. And there is a problem, because structurally, the way tacit knowledge is, we can't quantify it, we can't articulate it. We can only see its effects. We can only see the evidence of its passing or its application, and that makes it really hard. So I have some examples. I hope the video works. Does it work? Okay, I have non-video examples as well. So let's keep this one. Okay.
Oh, it's working. It's working.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what I want you to do before I will let it play once. I want you to look at the guy at the back, the guy with the black shirt at the back. Okay. By the way, this is a weird video. I don't buy gold and silver, but YouTube algorithm gave it to me, and somehow I found something relevant to my practice here. So we're looking at the guy here in the black at the back, okay?
I give you this bag of coins here, and we'll see what happens. I'm kind of excited for this. Uh-oh. All right, so I definitely brought an assortment. We've got gold, silver, we've got numismatics. We got a whole bunch of stuff here, and there are a few curveballs. They may not all be exactly what they appear to be. You know it right off the bat?
Yep. Smaller, and the sound that it made when it clinked against that. It's just when you deal with thousands and thousands of them a day, it's like
Dude, that took you like 1 second.
He does it by sense of smell.
So this is tacit knowledge in action. This is, you saw how quickly that person went, the moment the word curveballs is said, which implies one might not be fake, that person has already, like the moment those coins clinked on the tray, it was like one of them is fake. And I don't think he knows why. It's an introspection is the process of building the rule out of that. I don't know why that word, that I don't know why I know that. And I have to think about it and I have to ground it. But the starting point is tacit. All sports players use tacit knowledge. It's embodiment. Look at this again. How did that guy know that there was a guy there? The last time he looked at this corner is like 6 seconds before starting to move, right? So this is not just a personal embodied knowledge. This is a sense of a distributed embodied knowledge shared amongst 5 people. So it's not just the player with the ball that's cutting towards the rim. It's the other players as well that somehow they've existed in a system and they know where each other is going to be within space without having to look, right? And it's more than just, it's not just mechanics, because if you see here, this is a moment where you have to adapt to a situation that's not the way it was meant to be. This is the system. The system doesn't work this way. But it's like, okay, I have nowhere to go. Where is my passport? Not here, not here, not here. There might be someone there. I'm just going to throw it in the back. That's where they're supposed to be. And again, you don't have another amazing element of tacit knowledge. It kind of operates at the speed of thought. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. Same thing comes with driving. I don't know if you drive. There is a phenomenon that many drivers describe as their embodiment, their perspective of their embodiment shifting when they're driving, and somehow feeling the bumper of the car as the limit to their being, to their body. So it's somehow when you're driving, you're so much connected to this vehicle that you almost have a sensation of where your vehicle ends. And that's, for example, how you can park, or how you can park without seeing and kind of be a great driver. So even a lot of driving includes tacit knowledge. So again, something we're all doing, but we're not able to examine and build new knowledge because we've decided that we can only use the scientific knowledge to understand stuff. And henceforth, we've kind of handicapped ourselves in creating new understanding. And for example, saying, okay, you can do things in your practice, artistic, architectural, designerly, that feel right, but then you have to practice introspection in order to unpack and teach yourself how to do that consistently. Because as creatives, working class creatives, working creatives in general, we're not allowed to wait. We're not allowed to wait for inspiration to happen. Client comes in, he says design, you design. You don't say, nah, I don't feel like it today. Sorry, boss. So it's important to build those ways in our practice that we can go to the place where good ideas come from, and we can come back with results consistently and without having to think of the context, which is really important. So how do we make new knowledge? Normally, in modern times, we only use deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is the way of applying a general rule to a specific setting. So for example, I know the laws of gravity, right? I know the laws of freefall. There is a beautiful mathematical equation that applies it, which means if I take this thing and I let it go from the top of our building, from the 3rd floor, and I know that I'm this many meters away from the ground, I can pretty much very easily calculate how much time it's going to take for my jug to hit the pavement, right? And that generally is right. So again, when we're thinking about physics, that tends to work. When we're thinking about people, doesn't really apply. What's the type of reasoning? This is a great example. All men, humans are mortal. Sorry, it's an old text, so I didn't want to change it. I'd rather make a joke about it than change it. Socrates is a man, so by association, by putting A and B together, I get, therefore, Socrates is mortal, right? So it's a great way to understand physics, and it's a great way to make spaceships and cars and kind of amazing machines. But, if we apply it to humans, then we lose all of the beautiful creativity and the polyphony. And yeah, if someone gets to decide this, they get to kind of it's colonial thinking, right? All of my values have been applied to this setting, and I don't care if you don't agree because I universally have the right values. However, there is another way of thinking. There are more than many ways of thinking, and one is inductive reasoning. It's the way of slowly creating a general rule out of many different case studies. So I say, and this is not perhaps this is not the perfect way to say it, but it's like on Monday I got grumpy and I didn't have coffee. On Tuesday I was also grumpy and I didn't have coffee. And on Sunday I was also grumpy and I didn't have coffee. I know that coffee is addictive. That's the general rule. I've read about it. Therefore, I can assume that I might be addicted to coffee because I get grumpy when I don't have it. So this is a way of kind of using the intersubjective, using my lived experience and using what I know, what I've seen in front of me, and kind of slowly, by interrogating it, building a general rule. So the general rule here is you get headaches if you don't have coffee and you've been drinking coffee because it's an addictive chemical substance, right? So one way comes from the objective and kind of explains everything, whereas the other starts from the subjective and tries to create a hermeneutic schema that is able to explain other cases. And then we have abductive reasoning that we're not really going to think about, but it's essentially how do we react to a completely new situation? It's our first tool, and it includes the leap of faith. So it's like you're presented with a completely new machine, and you're like, okay, I'm going to push this green button and see what happens and take it from there and see what happens and kind of build the whole model ad hoc because I have no point of reference. We don't care about that right now. Forget it. So my work is usually I position it in the context of what we call research through design. And research through design is an inductive methodology of applying design in practice and in specific context as a way to do research. So there is research about design, which is the type of research that cognitive neuroscientists and many design scholars do, which is researching ways of designing and what design is and all that goodness. There is research in order to design, which is the work that we all do when we have to do a project. We always do research. If I'm doing a project about pigeons, I need to read about pigeons, understand physiology, understand what they eat, how they sleep, how they mate, what are their preferences, etc. And then there is research through design, where it is I'm doing design in order to understand design. And for research through design to work, experimentation is one hand, and the other hand is introspection. So the work is not finished, but the work is a mirror that I need to hold on. I need to hold to my creative process and understand my creative process by looking at the birth of something, but also by unpacking the result of my creative process and understanding how I got to this thing. So it's a very interesting epistemic tradition that is really conductive to everything that we've been speaking about. It is a method that feels that it has the capacity to explain things like intuition, to explain things like, not to explain, to give us a deeper understanding and to further our knowledge around intuition, inspiration, tacit knowledge, and how does creativity work. So in my work, I'll give you some examples. One, probably the most body of work has gone into this, is autoethnography. Autoethnography is, to me, I feel it should be a structural part of any research through design process. Autoethnography is a practice of experimenting the self when embedded within a setting. So as a method before design, it's been very successful in different fields. One where it's been very successful has been health professionals. If you think about nurses and doctors, they go through more trauma than we will go in 2 years in a single day, right? Think of an EMT. They're the first line of defense against death. And they get to see death every day, multiple times a day. They get to see people in the worst of the worst situations. So imagine how much trauma that person takes home after their day is done. And health professionals are generally super good at creating care practices in order to create a barrier between their professional lives and the trauma that they face, and to actually keep it together. And autoethnography has been one tool of enabling people to kind of reflect and share the personal care practices that they've developed and share them with their peers, not as a way to kind of create a body of work that people can refer to and relate to and try to find methods that might work them. So, for example, in design, we deal more with autoethnographies of making. One of my favorite circular arguments, I joke with my students all the time, Daksh has probably heard me say it, is like, you see someone making something, or you go up to them, you're like, what you making? And they're like, I will know when it's done. Like, okay, I can respect that. When will it be done? Like, it will be done when I know what it is. Now, if you tell that to a machine, a rational machine, they will explode because it's a paradox. It doesn't make sense. It's a circular argument. It just goes in circles. But for all of us humans, we're like, yeah, I know exactly that feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about because we have all been tied up in knots, and making that knot is not an exact science. It's just, you just have to keep pulling until something gives. So autoethnography is kind of like a diary study, but it's not autobiographical. It's very much based on rigor, and it's based on creating a narrative basis that can act as a way to analyze the self as a maker in the context of making, in the context of practicing design, but give it enough time and space, because when you're working, you don't want to stop working to take notes. You want to be in your flow. You want to keep working. So it's kind of post-phenomenological. Usually I tell people, write the last thing you do before you go to bed, write a diary. It might sound silly, but it's a great practice that really helps. And it's an invitation to this introspective learning of the self and development. Actually, we just finished a big special issue in the Code Design Journal about autoethnography of social design practices. And I'm really proud because we got more than 100 contributions, which is a lot for scientific papers. And it's a really diverse set of people. We have some people who are talking about repair and practices of repair. We have people who are talking about working, being embedded co-designers in healthcare settings, working with kids with terminal cancer, for example, and how, you practice that, and how it's like nothing I learned in design school prepared me for this. It has stories around research and how do we design research, and kind of the schizophrenic perspective that you need to be both a designer and a researcher at the same time, and managing that. So it's a very powerful tool in understanding that. It's hard to do because it takes vulnerability. It takes learning how to write and producing good text. It's also important, but it's a really important thing that I feel very strongly. It's a great tool to make anyone a better practitioner, not just designers. Another kind of approach that we did. This is a paper that I wrote with 4 friends in the island of Spyros. And what we tried to do was through reflective writing, we asked ourselves, how does the essence of place inform our practice? Because we all had very different practices. So one was very techie, HCI based. Another one was very artistic, based around street art and graffiti. One was material based, one was social. And we all assumed that the place informs our practice. So we all wrote a text that kind of described our process, our practice, and our positionality. And we actually did, like, starting from that non-scientific point, we actually did very rigorous sciencey work where we did a theme analysis. We read those texts word to word and started circling key terms that appeared to all the texts. And by this comparison, we kind of, we hypothesized that we will find elements of the place. And here are the elements of the place that were kind of appearing in all of our texts. So that means that probably that is something not universal, but not personal. It's intersubjective. That means that there is a collection of people that think of it as true, which is more than just one. So it's walking towards, I don't know if I want to be objective. I don't care about being objective. Another one part of my work has to do with material-based experiences. And we found that designers are pretty bad at describing experiences. We lack kind of the narrative, lyrical poetry to talk about that. And we're like, you know what? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. You know who's great at it? Wine sommeliers. If you go to a wine tasting, it's a heavily curated, very well developed, and very much linear process of an aesthetic experience. So it starts with your eyes looking at the wine, smell, mouthfeel, taste, aftertaste, plus the whole narrative layer about where the vineyard is, and et cetera, et cetera. So, for example, if you go into sommelier training, there is an actual book of metaphors around wine that you get examined on. So it's not, it doesn't come from creativity. It's actually a very organized practice. So we thought, okay, what if we take this beautiful protocol that's been developed for hundreds of years and has a strong language and apply it into material tests and do focus groups? And that's what we did. We published about it. We were asked by a billion-dollar sportswear company to consult, because I can't tell you which one, NDA, because they had a problem. We were like, we have 5 different types of clothing, and we describe them all as comfortable, stretchy, and waterproof. And how can someone who's not visiting our store but is browsing our webpage pick the one that better feels for them? So we're like, you need to go do some wine tasting. And we're like, cool, we're going to do that. So yeah, and they felt it really helped. So I'm really proud of that method. It's still being developed. And the other one was more artistic, and it's about those. So these are 5 different bioplastics based, food waste based bioplastics. So one is avocado pips, chamomile tea, egg cells, oranges, and banana peels. And we wrote a haiku poem that was trying to capture the experience of engaging with that material. And that was one to kind of play with this poetic language and kind of build kind of that more textual practice of talking about experience, but also in a sense of haiku is quite formulaic. And we felt that kind of limitation of 3-5-3 was a great kind of way to talk about material experiences. So one of my favorite materials, it's not here in this picture, the Excel one, I really love it. It looks like marble up close, and it's really uncanny for people when they look at it, and it's like, wow, that's actually waste. I think that's what we were also trying to speak about here, that look at this. This is not waste. These are useful materials that have a very high creative potential that we throw away because we've been fed a lie and we don't appreciate their value. But also, it's about kind of contradiction. So we had a ash-based material, bioplastic again, that looked very much like concrete. It was the perfect material for any type of brutalist kind of thing. However, that material was super light. So every time, sorry, I'm going to move my camera a bit. So every time people would look at it and they would try to pick it up from the table, and you would see them do that move. Because looking at the material, they assume this is concrete. Concrete is heavy. I'm going to have to use a lot of force to move this bit of material. And that material was very light. So they all kind of couldn't control their hand when touching it, which again, I think is a wonderful thing. And that is, it's a challenge to, for example, think about it. You go to Materium, you see all the recipes for bioplastics, they describe it. But how can you describe the material experience? It's not, you can't capture it in the screen. So I think that's also something to think about and ask ourselves, how can we better talk about material experiences and what the material feels like, not just what it looks like, or what are the chemical and kind of mechanical properties. So I tried to crystallize some conclusions for you as practitioners, kind of like what's the take-home message here. One is make sure that you look inside, make sure that you investigate yourselves and you ask yourselves the hard questions. Ask yourselves the questions that you're afraid that your tutor is going to ask in a crit. That's what I tell people for two reasons. One, because if you do it, then when they ask it, you're already prepared and you have the answer ready and you're going to look like a genius. And secondly, because it's important to interrogate those kind of tacit talents of creativity. And that's where it's important to be able to shift between your first and third person perspective. You should be able to try and kind of witness yourself working from behind your shoulder and ask yourself, like, what is this brilliant person doing? Make sure that you document everything. Take pictures, videos, notes, diaries, emails, everything. There is nothing. Make sure that you have too much. It's bad because then you can't go back. You can't go back to doing the thing that you did and take a video of it. It won't be the same. Build inductive arguments and try to extrapolate general rules for your practice based on those inductive arguments. And ask yourself, is that something that works in this setting, or is that something that will work in other times as well? That's how you build a practice. When you're making prototypes, try to make questions. Don't try to answer the question. Try to make a new, better question, because it's never about answering. Don't trust anyone who comes to you with answers. Trust your body, trust your second brain, trust your gut, because bodies never lie. Whether it's about relationship, whether it's about materials, whether it's about design, include your body in the process. I had a tutorial last week with a student. We were talking about relaxation, but also the rituals of coming back home. And I told her, you need to act out the movement because you're thinking about it in your head. Get up and do it, and you'll see that insights will emerge simply by role-playing that you're using an object that you've imagined in your head. And part of this and part of my kind of message is that if you do all of these things, you will be able to build a practice and you will be able to give yourselves the tools to be consistently great at your job. I see a lot of talented people that don't apply themselves and they think they can coast for life on talent alone, but talent without hard work is meaningless. You need both hard work and talent to make it, and it's important to do the work, to look inside and to open those doors. And finally, I have some list. I will send the presentation so you can look at it. The first one is my Notion list with a lot of papers around this. The rest is kind of some of my stuff and some other important stuff around that. But yeah, so that was kind of a brief. I feel it did good with time. I could have been faster, but I liked some of the stuff. And yeah, I'd love to hear your comments around or questions. And thank you again for the invitation. Really happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Spyros. That was quite lovely. I mean, just off the bat, I really like the wine example. It's something that I was also thinking about like a few months ago. If you think about it as a branding activity, like like you take an example of like MasterChef, right? On paper, a show like MasterChef shouldn't work. It's stupid because the audience can never taste the food. I mean, it's a show that is based on food tasting and a reality show on food tasting, and people have to vote for it. And the audience and hope can never taste the food that somebody's making. So it's the job of the chef and it's the job of the market people who are doing the marketing and branding to make sure that you use the words so correctly and so like the words are so important that they can describe the taste and then you can imagine how it tastes, right? So it's absolutely important for us designers to use the idea of words of how you describe something, and it can change the perception of the product itself. I think yeah, the wine is a very good example, and so is something like the food chefs, master chefs, and it was lovely to
Absolutely.
see.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. And I think that's how I got to wine as well. I love food shows, I love food. And I felt that gastronomy is very much acquired. And I was like looking for the lower hanging fruit. And wine tasting, thankfully, it's really, how can I put it? It's idiot proof. It's so well structured and so, you get so much, books to read, especially if you can read French, that yeah, it was super helpful to lean on that. But yeah, food was also our starting point. And it started by that, where I remember I was reading, the back of a single origin coffee, and I was like, boozy coffee, whatever, coffee is coffee. And I make it, and I'm like, damn it, I can actually taste the jasmine. I hate myself for being like boozy, but also you have to appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll open a few questions if anybody has any questions. I think we can take a couple of questions if anybody has any questions about to Spyros. Anybody? Ashvi, Sayan, Rishita, Farha, Kavya, some names that I can
Hi.
see. Hello. Yeah, sure, go
I
ahead.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the lovely presentation. I do have a question. Uh, Not all of us are great at expressing what we design or how we design or the process we go through. So, how do we make ourselves better in expressing in terms of words? Is it through practice or we just let the design speak for itself?
I love how that we were discussing this exact similar thing 1.5 hours ago. Like we had a talk with Miles and Spyros, and everybody was just discussing that. Please take it up, Spyros.
That's a beautiful question. For me, I think leaving the design to speak for itself, I don't like taking that risk. I think it can be done, but it's a risk. I think that speaking about the work is a skill. It's in the same way as working a muscle or the same way as making models or making prototypes. I think it's important to keep doing it. It's important to just do it with your peers, do it to your friends, and you'll see how it's like telling a story. I'm sure you've like something happens to you and you have to tell the story. So you start by telling it to your best friend, right? Then you tell it to someone else, someone else, someone else. And you find that as you're telling the story kind of develops, the beats develop, the narratives develop. Like, oh, this joke never landed, so I take it out, right? It's the same with speaking about the work. And a piece of advice I give to all my students is read and write. I think the more you engage with literature, the more you build this kind of thing, because it's a thing that you can build. It's an acquired skill. No one is born charismatic or eloquent. I fell in love with poetry late in life. I was probably in my 30s when I started reading poetry, and I really I appreciate the economy of poetry. I love literature, but I appreciate poetry as well. And I think, for example, reading, not just reading around about the work. There are amazing kind of cultural critics and people who review designs. If you go beyond just the designs and the Yanko designs, where the text is just, it's there to, because we needed text, but actually like critiques, good text, and that can be political, that can be designerly. But I think engaging with texts is you, it's osmosis. You absorb words, you absorb ways of speaking, and it will come back to the work. And then it's about keep talking about the work, keep talking about the work, and keep improving the way that you talk about the work, because that's the only way to be better, is to just keep doing it, and just don't be afraid of it.
I think there's a message in the chat. I'll just read it out. I think we all can agree that a building without its beauty will never inspire us to think of the next building in the manner we would rather want. Therefore, I believe it is important to critique the manner of which we desire. I guess.
I partly agree with that statement, because I'd say, again, I still feel at days like a pubescent boy. I'm very reactive. So some of the buildings that lack beauty are the ones that kind of inspire the best reactions as adversarial. I agree. I think that the buildings that are really dead are the buildings that are bland, are the ones that kind of blend into the background. I'd rather have a very ugly building that I'm like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But somehow elicits a response, than one that's kind of meh. Like, I hate meh. That's probably the worst.
And it's kind of interesting to me because if you think about it, like we've always been told that design is quite subjective in nature. But when you visit these, for example, if you visit Taj Mahal, nobody who's ever visited Taj Mahal has said that it's a bad building. So there is some objectivity to subjectivity as well. It's sometimes there is just like what you were talking about, intuitiveness. There is some intuition within us, whether you're a designer or not a designer. Just the idea of space, time, function, form is embedded into us, right? It's something that comes in intuitively to us, where we are like, we can tell something is good or bad. Of course, the range can vary depending on the subjectivity of the work, but there is something that brings it up. So
I think I always kind of frame aesthetics kind of as a two-pronged thing, in the sense where you're absolutely right. There is a naturalist element to aesthetics, right? It's the sensors, it's the eyes, and it's kind of the, almost, how can I put it, the primeval part of our brain, which, for example, same way, Taj Mahal, a grand cathedral, the Parthenon, there is kind of a naturalist element to the aesthetics. It feels like it's a thing from nature, even though it's not natural, that puts us at ease. And I think there is an added layer to that, kind of cultural and behavioral aesthetics, where it's the things that we appreciate as beautiful because we've kind of been told, and we've been surrounded by, and we've been conditioned to believe that is beautiful, be it people, buildings, designs. And I think both are working at the same time. And I think when you find people who have this kind of reductionist approach, and they're like, it's one or the other, they're really missing the other half. And I think that's the important part of the happy medium, the happy balance between the two, the balance between the objective and the subjective, the balance between our kind of sensory computing and our emotional kind of apparatus working in parallel.
anybody else has any questions? Or okay, I guess that's it for the session today. I think we had quite a long session of an hour and a half. So it was wonderful talking to you, Spyros, again.
Thank you.
And
Thank you again for the invitation.
we're grateful to have you as our first speaker. And it was lovely meeting you. I think we had like 30, 35 people today, like right now, and probably way more in the subsequent workshops. So thank you so much. And
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. What's the one piece of advice that you would give someone aspiring to be a UI UX designer? Let me find the right words because the thing I was about to say would sound wrong.
careful, we have a service designer at
Oh no, I
DRCA
think
as well.
the thing is UI UX, focus on being a great designer. Don't focus on the word that characterizes design. Master the processes of design, because UI UX is all the rage right now, and importantly, and that's where the market is, and that's what the market buys. But no one can really know if that will be the case in 5 years from now. Those circles have really narrowed down. So my advice is teach yourself a way of learning more than anything. Become an expert designer and then become expert in UI UX, because then you will be able to pivot. And that's something that you will have to do in your career many times. You will have to pivot from UI UX to AR to something else, the new thing that will happen. And if you build a very good, strong designerly foundation, not like the when we say design thinking, you know, that TEDx style design thinking, the way of thinking about design, the practice about design, then you will be able to design anything with a bit of learning to understand the rules. So to me, my advice is become a designer first and then become a UI UX expert. And the other piece of advice is be brave. Put your work out there. Just presence. Presence is very important.
I think a couple more questions, but I think this one already is taken, like you've already sort of answered it. What is one piece of advice will you give to a graduate architect just stepping into the profession? I think Spyros has already talked about just putting yourself out there and not worry a lot. And I think the last one is with Bhargavi. What would you advise for becoming a specialist or generalist designer? Would you consider things in manufacturing or engineering or some parallel things design should be a designer or doing? Oh, like jack of all trade or master of none. What would you say about that?
I am in the camp that design is a translational activity, and in reality, the brand of design work is getting all of the experts in the room and facilitating their conversation and collaboration. So to me, design can have specialization, but in reality, it will always be the jack of all trades. Not the second part, not the master of none.
Yeah.
I think you can master a subset of important things like manufacturing or UI UX, but at the end of the day, remember to be designers. Don't become computer scientists. Don't become architects. Stay designers and make sure that you can keep lubricating those conversations, so to speak, because that's our superpower as designers, being the bridge, being interdisciplinary, being able to be the facilitators of creativity.
Oh, thank you. With that thought, we'll end today's talk. I completely agree with whatever Spyros said. So thank you for everybody who joined
Of course,
in.
I hold power. No, we don't work like that.
It was lovely having you and everybody else. Thank you for raising some important questions, listening to us. We'll come back with another session sometime. Thank you,
Amazing.
Spyros.
Thank you very much and have a
See you.
wonderful weekend, everyone. And let me guess, good, I'd say afternoon, right? We have 5.5 hours.
We have people from all over the world. There are some people
Okay.
from America, some people
Good
from India. We're
afternoon,
in London.
good night, good evening.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you all. Bye.
Yeah.